We are rolling 3 episodes back to back to back today on July 4th. And happy freedom to you. Happy 4th of July. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into the podcast. If you're listening to this episode, you're tuning into it today for the first time, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for rocking with the podcast. If you've been hanging with us, Gino, I love you so much. You're incredible. Mr. Wayne Freeman, I love you. Justin Williams, I love you. You're incredible. So many people. Rhonda, I got a chance to talk to Rhonda the other day, and it just really blew my mind. It touched my heart. She had been listening to the podcast, and she had just told me, sent me a note from her heart, and it was amazing. So all your comments, I read all the comments. I respond to them. It's me that's doing it. It's not somebody else, not a little bot, anything like that. And so I want to thank you for that. If you just tuned in too, we were on the third part of a 3-part series on wisdom. We started off in Proverbs 2, and it was titled, But First Wisdom. The last episode that we just finished up, was the greatest investment that you could ever make. And guess what? I'll give you the spoiler alert. It's wisdom. And now we're finishing up with this 3-part series in Proverbs 4, and it's wisdom, understanding, and instruction. I was talking with my buddy Dave Hamilton yesterday, and he was saying that, almost the wisdom, he used the word discretion, but I'm going to use the word instruction. And so he said that wisdom is that kind of philosophy. The understanding is when it becomes personal. And then the instruction is how you can add action to those things. And it was like, whoa, he said, there's no reason to have wisdom if you don't own it for yourself, and then there's no reason to own it unless you're actually going to use it. And imagine those simple things, right? To hear the story, to own it or accept it, and then to add action to it. When you take those 3 elements, you could pretty much look at anybody who's successful in a marriage or a relationship or a business or anything like that, and you could see that they're doing those things. So it's been amazing. We're doing the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's Proverbs 4. 4th of July. Happy 4th to every single one of you. I absolutely love you. I'm in my happy place because I'm in the studio. We're recording podcasts, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. We're doing the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, which is 3,000-year-old wisdom, and today is wisdom, understanding, and instruction. Let's get this party started.
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never know, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
You'll have more opportunities to quit than you will to succeed. And I learned this throughout my whole entire career. I had 30 years in the professional beauty industry. Started off as a hairdresser and built salons all over the country and built teams. And we had an incredible, incredible run. And what I found was there was more opportunity to quit than there was to succeed. And it even happened this morning. I walked up in the studio and I had left my cameras on. Well, one of my cameras had run out of battery. So I looked at it and I was like, I'm not going to have 2 camera angles. And I'm not going to be able to do this kind of thing. So maybe I should not do the podcast, and maybe I should save it for later. And then that resiliency muscle came in because it's been worked quite a bit, and not having the perfect circumstances, not having, throughout my life, not having exactly the perfect timing or anything like that. It's just about starting and doing. And that part kicked in, and I said, well, I could just do one shot. So for the last 2 episodes, it was just one camera. There was not multiple cameras and angles and things like that. But what God was saying to me is like, is it in the routine and all the production, or is it in your heart? Man, that hit me. He talked to me about this at the beach this morning because I was struggling as I was writing this morning, as I was writing Proverbs 4, I was struggling. And what God was telling me, he said, I'm not going to show up in your ritual. Sometimes I will. I'm not going to show up in your routine. Sometimes I will. But I'll always show up in the moment. And I just need you to be in this moment right now. I need you to live. I need you to laugh. I need you to experience life. And those will be the stories that people will be inspired by, not the things that you try and force. And so I want to encourage every single one of you out there that a relationship with God, like, it's not about you having to do all these things. It's just about you enjoying your life. And God will meet you where you are. He'll meet you exactly where you're at, and then he'll ask you to meet others where they're at. So today, again, as I walked on the beach and as I annotated and as I read the word this morning, I struggled with it. And then what broke it loose and what broke the creativity is I actually wrote a letter to myself, and I would invite you all to do this. I wrote a letter to myself for 3 pages today, and I just kind of dumped out my brain. And as I was dumping out my brain, I was, talking about the feelings that I was having, and I was, foggy a little bit this morning, all the things. And then God just started to talk to me. He's like, I got you. But I'm not going to allow you to become clear when you think that it's in your routine. I'm in the moment. Be in the moment right now. You're sitting at the beach. It's absolutely beautiful. You have a family that loves you. You have kids that love you. You have a wife that loves you. You get to do a podcast like this that you absolutely love to do, and you get to do 3 of them today. So I want to really encourage every single one of you that if you have a routine or a ritual or all those things, and none of those things are bad, but don't let them become your God. Allow yourself to stay fluid and have a good time and enjoy exactly what's happening right now. So with this, with Inchstones, Inchstones are a little tiny thing that you can do today or that you can experience today that will create the milestone later. And we do the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. And this was hit me so personally today because wisdom, understanding, and instruction, that was the key words that were, but they came in after I actually went through the whole lesson in Proverbs 4. So in verse 1, it said, before you jump in, listen and pay attention. So I fail at this a lot. A lot of times I'll hear something, it'll sound really cool, and then I'll be like, oh man, I need to do it. And I jump right in. So shoot, and then aim, and then, I don't know, the scenario that you say, but they say that you should, measure twice, cut once. Well, as a kid, I would cut 14 times, then I'd measure afterwards, then I'd think, oh man, maybe I screwed it up a little bit. And then in my head, I was like, oh, it's art. But imagine this, like with wisdom, before you jump in, listen and pay attention, and that's in verse 1. If you listen and pay attention to wisdom, you'll see that there's nothing bad about wisdom. There's no downside to it. It's all upside. Although I was asking in my men's group the other day, why doesn't wisdom have that addictive gene to it? Like, I wish I could become addicted to wisdom, but I believe, this is just my own thought, so take it with a grain of salt. But I believe that God did not allow wisdom to have an addictive gene because he wanted you to have to make a conscious choice to go towards wisdom every single day. Because if it had an addictive gene to it, then you would just get in the motion, the ritual, or the routine of it. And sometimes it wouldn't have life like I experienced today at the beach. Because I went to try and get wisdom through, like I got to the beach, I read the thing, I walked and I drank the water and I sat down and I was like, and now it's supposed to come. And God was like, nah, it ain't coming like that. I need you to be with me. And imagine that in every single relationship, every single business. When you put the placards on the wall that say these are our core values, and then you expect people to live by the core values as opposed to being there present every single day and allowing it to be alive, that the culture is alive, that's when cultures die. So in verse 2, it says, evaluate the value. So before you jump in, listen and pay attention. Listen and pay attention to wisdom, and you'll see that there's no downside to wisdom. And then evaluate the value in verse 2. If you evaluate the value of what truly wisdom is and go back to the last couple episodes, and you'll see what the value is, and we'll talk about it today. And then in verse 3, it says, can it relate to you? So if you have a person that says, oh man, I am the coach of whatever, does it relate to you? Can it relate to you because if it can't, it's not going to become personal. If it's not personal, you won't do it anyway. And so, can it relate to you? So, as I look at this thing, in verse 3, does this scenario or situation have a personal connection point to who you are? The next thing, I'm getting a little choppy with my video. The next thing is understand and the understanding, right? So if we go from wisdom and then we go into understanding, right? So wisdom is that overarching, is looking at it and saying, oh, wow, look at this philosophy. Understanding is making it personal. Instruction is actually applying the action. So in understanding, it's funny because in verse 4 through 9, it just says simply get wisdom and get understanding. That's the first. To get wisdom, to get understanding. And here's what wisdom will give you. So wisdom will watch over you and it'll protect you. Understanding will exalt you and honor you. Wisdom will watch over you and protect you. Understanding will exalt you and honor you. So with wisdom, the philosophy part of it, or what you see that happens, that wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge, it'll watch over you and it'll protect you. When you add understanding and it becomes yours, you'll start to be exalted and it'll start to honor you. Wisdom will allow you to walk and run free. So protect it. And that's in verse 10 and 12. And in verse 13, wisdom will give you instruction. So when we look back, wisdom will give you understanding, but also wisdom will give you instruction. It'll give you actionable things that you could do, put in line, that will actually that you'll start to see results happen. And in verse 14 through 17, don't listen or pay attention to silly people. They will bring silly results. This is a part that has been so big on my heart because every time that I hang out with silly people, that I listen to silly people, that I pay attention to them, then silly results happen. And then I'm taken back at the end and saying like, oh my gosh, why did this happen? Well, I know why the thing happened now that I look back at it, because silly people bring silly results. So just steer clear of silly people. In verse 18, it lets you know that wisdom is not silly. In verse 19, silly people bring silly results, and it emphasizes it again. In verse 20 through 22, it talks about listening and paying attention. There's a difference. If we listen to something, it's different than paying attention. First we listen, then we pay attention. When we listen and it has credibility, it relates to us, we can have the tendency to start to look at it and say, oh, now I'll pay attention to that. How can we pay attention? Through our ears, through our eyes, through our heart, and through our body. Our ears, what we listen to. Our eyes, what we see. Our heart is what we allow in to us. And then when we start to see our body move in that motion, in that action, and what it is that we're doing, we'll realize what we saw, what we heard, right? And what we allowed into our heart. In verse 23, then it talks about guarding your heart. In verse 24 through 27, what flows from your heart? Why is it so important to guard our heart? Because what flows from our heart is our words, our sight, our steps, our path, and our life. And imagine that. Let's go back. So we look at our life. Oh, my life's not going the way that I want it to go. Oh, well, then look at your path. Well, if we look at our path, then our path is made up of our steps. Our steps is made up of our sight, what we could see. And our sight is made up of our words because we speak life. And where do those words come from? They come from our heart, because the overflow of the heart is the words that come out of our mouth, and they have the power of life and death. So as I looked at this thing today, and even as I struggled today with, different camera angles, all the different things, what God was saying to me is, be here right now. Be here with me right now. I am in the moment. I am never. Well, when I say never, you could find me sometimes in the routine, but that's not where I reside. Sometimes I'll be there in the ritual, but that's not where I reside. But you'll always, evergreen, always find me in the moment. And I just want you to be here and be present with me. And so if you hear my word and you want it to become personal and you want to have action, then you've got to be here and present with me right now. And in Proverbs 4, which is, it's crazy because as we end up today on Independence Day, if you want to have that independence, right? Well, if you want to have that independence, you want to have that freedom, God wants us to be free to walk, to run. And he says that when we seek out wisdom, he'll ultimately give us that freedom. So it has been my honor, my pleasure. 3 episodes back to back. Go back and check them out. And I want to encourage every one of you that no matter what you're going through today, no matter where you're at today, be right there. Be in that place. The success you may think is in the plan, but the magic is always in the moment. And the magic will do more for anything, any situation than anything that you could ever imagine. And when we simply seek wisdom, which is just spending time with him, everything seems to fall in line. JP said it like this: everything turns out great in the end. And if it's not great, it's not the end. Have a wonderful day. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no